Hey there, everyone. Welcome to Fantasy for the Ages, the show where a father and son talk about fantasy, science fiction, and other nerdy things we enjoy. Today, just Jim, the father here, coming at you with a quick take. My top 6 books that almost made me cry. If you enjoy or cry over this episode, we hope you'll click that like button down below, subscribe to our channel if you haven't, leave comments in the comment box. We always reply. And look down in the show notes for all the ways you can connect with Zach and I. And thank you to those of you who support us on Patreon, helping us pay for all the stuff that keeps this coming out. If you'd like to explore Patreon and help support us, take a look for us, Fantasy for the Ages, on patreon.com. Books are amazing and powerful in their ability to sweep us away from our current settings and put us into the minds, places, and experiences of others, not just as a spectator, but as someone who feels the emotions of the moment. Skilled authors, they suck us in. They literally, just with written words, cause us to laugh out loud, to gasp in shock, to throw a book down in disgust, gently be good to books, or even, upon rare occasion, they can make us cry. Think about that. It's just a book, and you may end up weeping like a baby. That's some powerful writing. That literature can do this is part of why compelling stories endure through the ages. It's also why I'm so exceedingly thankful that A, my mom encouraged me to read, especially fiction, from a very early age, and B, I found reading to be easy. I know that is not the case for everyone. These days, thank goodness for audiobooks, so that issues processing the written word no longer gatekeep people from these amazing stories. So, back to weeping. I don't cry. I just don't. And none of this toxic masculinity garbage. I'm just not someone who cries. It's not a guy thing. Some people are like this. Or maybe I'm just screwed up somehow. It's possible. I'm not diagnosing myself. I'm not a psychiatrist or psychologist. But the fact is, I don't cry. Not since early childhood. And I can't even actually remember the last time I genuinely shed tears. But an incredibly gut-wrenching story might bring me close. You know, wet eyeballs, eye moisture. No leaking, but definitely the moisture. Some of you out there, you know what I'm talking about. You don't cry either, but you maybe have to wipe it away just a little bit or blink a little extra. I mean, that's a good story. Oh my goodness. And certainly all the feels are there that people get when they cry. From outside of science fiction and fantasy, 2 stories I read many years ago definitely hit me that way. And I remember it so well. One of them, Where the Red Fern Grows by Wilson Rawls, and the other, Old Yeller by Fred Gibson. If you've read these classics, you know what I mean. I wonder if it's coincidence that they both have to do with boys and their dogs. Today, I want to share 6 books from science fiction and fantasy, mostly, that almost made me cry. And I'm going to spoil moments from these books. So be sure to look at the show notes or the episode chapters here on the YouTube screen so that you can jump past ones that you maybe haven't read or don't know about and don't want to have spoiled. If you don't care, just watch right on through. But I'm coming clean here. These are the ones that nearly got me. First one, we've got a nice classic version of it, Les Miserables, Victor Hugo. 1862. Pretty much the whole freaking book can make me cry. Almost. There's so much tragedy. The story of Jean Valjean and Fantine and Cosette and Inspector Javert and thing after thing after thing that happens, and Valjean cannot get a break. Starts out so rough, imprisoned just for trying to feed his family, and loses so much of his life. And then he gets a chance to make a difference. And now every turn, it doesn't matter how much good he tries to do, things seem to turn bad. It's like there's no justice. Fate is against him. It's a tragedy with heart. There is some good that comes in the end, but even that comes with heartbreak. So this is one, if you've seen the musical, if you've watched the movie adaptation, I mean, then but the book, it's a classic piece of literature. It's historical fiction. You might say somewhat fantasy, but this one's only kind of touching into it. I had to put it in there because it's big, and I recommend the book. Next up, this one's from a younger literature. It's for kids, but I was a teacher, and I came upon this book as a teacher, and I'm talking about The Bridge to Terebithia by Catherine Patterson. Wow, this story, the main crux of it and what gets you in it is it focuses on a young boy, Jess, who befriends a new person in town, Leslie Burke. She is different from most of the kids. She's a bit of a tomboy, doesn't like doing things like the girls do, and doesn't really care so much if she doesn't fit the expectations people have of her. But she doesn't live too far from where Jess does, and he and she strike up a friendship. And it does fit here because they kind of escape from the world by going off into the woods and having adventures with their grand imagination. And Leslie is the one that's really got this huge imagination, and she works with Jess to create this fantasy kingdom, Terebithia. And to get to it, they find a log over a river, and they walk across, balance across this scary log, and they come to their kingdom. And they have all these fantasy adventures, and it's all just in their mind, and it's wonderful, it's cute, it's delightful, it's escapism for them. But then there's the time that Leslie dies. Tragic accident. It has to do with Terebithia and that bridge. And very, very sad thing. Jess takes it hard, and it's a moment of growth for him as the petty things that were so important to him as a child are shifted into a different kind of focus because of what's just happened now, and he has to grow up really fast. If you've read Bridge to Terebithia, you know how badly you feel for Jess, with Jess, when the news of Leslie's death comes. And the guilt he feels, it's a hard moment, and that could almost make you cry. So, Bridge to Terebithia. The next one, so this would be number, book 3 of mine, and I'm going from the bottom to the top. So, this is the next one up that can make my eyes start to water, but it's for good reason. It's from C.S. Lewis's The Chronicles of Narnia, the final book, The Last Battle. When we've kind of passed through all of the action and adventure of the story, all of our main characters are together again, and they're going further up and further in. And you realize they've all died, but that's not the end. And that they're going up to the place that has been prepared for them by Aslan and his father, and this grand picture of a future that awaits us all. And how as they go on up and they're meeting up with people from different places, their parents, people from stories gone by that they bonded with and were gone and passed away, Caspian. I mean, all these people that they're reunited with, and you feel it. And it's an image you'd want to have happen. Is it exactly what we can expect after death? Well, I'm not going into that one. That's a little different than this context. But when I read this story and the way C.S. Lewis portrays this, can almost tear me up. So, The Last Battle. Next up. Oh my goodness. Okay, here we're going sci-fi, although it's written more in a emotional drama. And that's Flowers for Algernon by Daniel Scott Keyes. Flowers for Algernon, I first read as a short story in high school, and then I read the filled out novel version later. It already hit me in high school. But basic crux of the story here, if you're not familiar with it, and I assume you are if you're watching this, but I'll just remind you anyways. There's a person who's mentally challenged and has a perfectly happy life, does not realize that the people around him are taking advantage of him, are making fun of him. He just sees people interacting with him as friends. They give him attention, and it's wonderful. But he has an opportunity to participate in a experimental procedure that could help him. He gets involved with this, and it does help him. What it does is it improves his intellect, and he starts getting smarter. And there's a number of moments in here that are kind of, tough moments, such as when he gets smart enough to realize all his friends were, just making fun of him all the time. And now that he's smart enough to understand it, now they all feel very uncomfortable, and they're not his friends anymore. Now he's the weirdo. He's gotten too smart. They don't want to talk to him at all. So the loneliness that comes in. He does fall in love, and that's a positive, but then he gets too smart for the person he's in love with, and his relationship takes a hit. And it's like he was happy, and then he goes through these phases, but then he becomes a genius. And again, he's so alone now because nobody can talk to him. He's smarter than everyone around, and he's too smart to relate with people. But the real tough part is before he was experimented on, they had success with a mouse, Algernon, who got smarter and smarter. Charlie is the guy who they did the experiment on. He's friends with this mouse. And then he's, interested in this mouse as he gets more intelligent. And then, he can actually examine the mouse and study the results of the experiments. And he's the first one to come to realize the experiment is not lasting. And Algernon's starting to get less intelligent, losing his upgrades. And then eventually it starts happening to Charlie. And then there's the moment Algernon dies. And you realize this is going to happen to Charlie. So that moment when the mouse passes away is very, very sad because of its massive implications all the way through. This is a deep book. So it's written in journal format. You're seeing Charlie's thoughts on the written page all the way through, and the way Daniel Scott Keyes writes this is brilliant. So hard recommend for Flowers of Algernon, but have some Kleenex nearby. My fifth book to bring to you here, second greatest impact on here, perhaps, is The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien, the final concluding book of The Lord of the Rings. And the moment I'm talking to you here about is the Grey Havens. That scene that happens near the end of the book when Frodo and Sam have come to the Grey Havens, and Sam realizes what's happening here, that Frodo is going to leave. They've made it through this whole incredible adventure, and a little time has passed here now, and Sam realizes Frodo has never been able to truly bounce back and be happy. And it's because he carried the ring for so long, and this is his chance to finally get relief, to finally find joy, that he's going to leave. And Sam, his constant companion, can't go with. And he's heartbroken, and we're heartbroken. We're heartbroken for Frodo, that he cannot enjoy the world he has saved. He's too damaged. But also for Sam, that his closest companion and friend, he has to say goodbye to. And yet there's laid out there that there's time for Sam. Sam can have a life. Sam can enjoy a family and everything, enjoy this world. But one day, if he grows weary, there can be a place for him as well. And a chance to reunite with Frodo. It's a tearjerker moment. I don't cry. Moisture. All right, the last book I'm bringing to you. We're going to the Wheel of Time for this one. The Shadow Rising by Robert Jordan. There is a moment in this book that is just not fair. Oh, so hard not to cry. It happens in the Two Rivers. Again, if you haven't read this, don't listen to me now. Skip ahead. Uh, Perrin and Fael have returned to the Two Rivers. Perrin didn't get here quite as fast as he wanted because of shenanigans that were going on with Fael and Loyal, but they finally get here, and he discovers things have been rough. There's been Trolloc attacks. There's white cloaks in town. The people have been really struggling, but they have some really bad news for Perrin. His entire homestead has been wiped out. His entire family killed. And he's just, well, these things happen. It's hard to hear. But what are we going to do? What do we move on with? And Fael, seeing him kind of shutting down, going numb, forces him to confront the loss. Despite his resistance, and he breaks down. This strong blacksmith of a man crumbles in her arms and sobs uncontrollably. And I'm also almost getting moist in the eyes describing this one. And it's cathartic for him, and he's just got to let it out. And he's a mess, and but you can feel it. You're in there with him. Oh my goodness, that's so hard. All right, so that's 6 books, but wait, there's more. Because I have one more moment to bring to you. My biggest and best moment. I think the one where, I don't know, maybe I did cry, but I'm not going to admit it. And it's back to Return of the King. And it's that moment, the end of the battles. Frodo and Sam have woken up after all has been done. And they come out of where they have been convalescing, resting, recovering, and all the people are gathered. And they are honored. And most specifically, they are honored by Strider, Aragorn, the new king who bows to them. And it's just a moment that, after all they've been through, to be raised up, it hits. And this one actually, I mean, I reread the section from the book to refresh it for me, but I think Peter Jackson does this even better than the book. Sacrilege. The way he portrays that emotion in his adaptation of The Return of the King. He tweaks it a little bit, but he gets across that same thing. You, my friends, bow to no one. And he bows, and everybody bows to the hobbits, to Frodo and Sam. And wow, that gets you. That's really good. All right, those are my 6 books, 7 moments that most make me almost cry. What about yours? I'm sure there are ones out there I just haven't read yet. Let me know your thoughts. Certainly let me know if you agree with any of these, if I made you tear up while I talked about them. My apologies, and you're welcome. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.